everyone. I am excited to have with us today Gunjan Arya, who is the CEO at OML, Only Much Louder, which is, as they define, a clutter-breaking, market-leading media and entertainment organization working across various media and experiential formats to impact pop culture. Gunjan has spent almost 9 years here, starting out as business head, then moving to managing partner, and now CEO. Prior to that, she's had extensive experience in marketing, design, and branding agencies. She has an undergraduate degree from Emerson College in new media and marketing communication, and she topped that up with a program at Harvard University in strategic management. More importantly, having met Gunjan, her friends, her colleagues, and lots of people who know her, she really is someone who personifies simplicity, humility, and warmth. So here's a CEO with both head and heart in the right place, a very rare combination. Gunjan Arya, thank you so much for doing this for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a very, very flattering invitation. But thanks so much for having me here. I'm hoping that our conversation helps build on the work that you've already been doing with not just education, but now looking at the future of work.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Gunjan. And let's just get started with just laying the context for this conversation. I've been talking to lots of people, and they've been giving me different perspectives on why they think the future is important from their lens. So, as you sit at the helm of this organization in the media and entertainment space, why keep your pulse on the future? Why is this conversation important to have?
I think in the media landscape, we don't have a choice but to keep looking out for what's evolving. If I look at just the 20 odd years that OML's been part of the ecosystem, the landscape itself has changed from radio to television to then the internet becoming the go-to platform for new artists to break out. That is something I have seen in my time at OML itself. And anticipating those trends has really allowed us to stay on top of what's coming. Also, given our work in the media landscape, our job has always been to look out for who the gatekeepers are, because that is how culture evolves. That is how newer artists get an opportunity to put their work out, to put their voice out. And if we're not able to identify who the gatekeepers of that are, we're not going to be able to find ways around. I know I'm speaking very theoretically right now, but let me give you an example. If I look at what happened with independent music talent, and OML started out repping independent musicians are musicians that don't have a record label company that back them up. Record label companies typically sign artists with whom they can then produce CDs. Of course, CDs don't exist now, but when OML started, CD sales and cassette sales were a large part of artist revenues. So typically as an artist, you'd sign up with a record label company. They would help you make a music video. That music video would get broadcast on, VH1s and Channel V's of the like. And because of that, you would get discovered by fans who are tuning in to check out new music, check out new artists. And then you'd get a chance to have a portion of the CD sales. That is how artists made money. Cut to OML starting out saying, hey, it pays to be an independent. Today, all of us are consuming content online. Let's not partner with record labels. Instead, let's go to the internet directly. YouTube was our first platform of choice. We started a production team at OML to support the artist management team, purely to make music videos and put them up on YouTube. Of course, this production team today is producing content for platforms such as Amazon Prime Video, Netflix, Disney Plus, Hotstar in India. But it started out with wanting our artists to find more audiences. And we saw that those audiences were online purely because we knew what our content consumption habits looked like. If we were discovering newer artists online, we knew that it was time to disrupt the model of going to a record label company.
Okay.
Which is why looking at trends, looking at the future becomes so important.
Okay, great. Okay, so you're saying in your capacity, obviously you need to keep your pulse on the future, keep your pulse on future trends. platforms, consumer behavior, consumer trends, all of it. It seems like you seem very plugged into what's coming and then sort of try to figure out how to plan for that coming future. And you've seen a lot of disruption, a lot of change in the last 20 years or so that you've been tracking OML's journey. Okay, terrific. Okay, and you touched upon a bunch of these things during this opening. If we can go now a little bit deeper into specifically what factors you're seeing coming into play going forward. You explained to me a little bit of the landscape so far. What's coming, and what are some of the factors that you're seeing that are going to now be the factors for the next disruption wave?
I think there are massive disruptions coming our way. If you just look at what's happening with technology, the cost of producing content has reduced dramatically, which makes each one of us a content creator. The fact that all of us have access to a cell phone, which today is capable of producing feature-length films, all of us have access to high-speed internet. We're able to broadcast our own journeys. We're not stuck waiting for a TV deal or an output deal with a big broadcaster. We're able to put our stories out on our own. Globalization is going a big way. So there are a lot of cross-border collaborations. We're sitting here and consuming content from Korea and Turkey and Spain. These are the three most popular international genres of content in India today, outside of just Indian languages.
You said Korea, Turkey, and Spain.
Yes, Turkish language shows, Spanish language shows, and Korean shows are some of the biggest international languages getting consumed after English. Then if you look at just economic trends, right? To me, I think if you look at the entire influencer journey, influencing as a professional job, as a career choice, is almost disrupting what capitalism stood for while embodying it as well. On one hand, you're saying, hey, I have distribution, I have interest from X amount of target audiences, and therefore I can use that influence or that or that media footprint to be able to carry branded messaging on my own. And the flip side of that is, hey, there was a capitalistic structure which gave power to media organizations of the past, and I'm going to take that away from, right? And as an individual, I'm going to challenge that. I remember doing this
challenging the social
study.
hierarchies, challenging the
yes,
oligopoly
absolutely.
of the content.
100%. Yeah. And that's where social and cultural factors are going to go a long way in shaping the future of work. We remember doing this study for a brand that works with us in about 20 other countries. And our pitch to them was, don't work with the various MTVs of each of those countries, even though you believe your TG is 18 to 24, that's the audience you want to talk to. Instead, let's look at the biggest YouTubers in each of those countries. And this was 7 years ago. Let's look at each of the YouTubers, the top YouTubers in those countries, and look at their target audiences. You will see that their following or their viewership count is far higher than the local TV stations that attract those audiences. And maybe it's time to shift your budgets there.
Okay, and they did do that, right? They did go ahead with that.
Absolutely, they did that. They 100% went with that, and we've now built an entire business model on the back of it. But this is even before influencer marketing as a phrase was going. Okay. I remember our first deal was with.
Do you see this?
Sorry?
Do you see this trend moving forward get even more and more sort of more prominent, with more influencers coming into the fray, with more people consuming content, branded content on these social media platforms? Or do you see something else come along and disrupt this industry as well?
I think we're going to see a lot more of it before it changes. And as somebody who reps a roster of 100 plus talent in India alone, and we've worked with more than thousands globally, I personally want to see the phrase influencer itself go, because it honestly means nothing. These are digital celebrities. I think one, it's time for us to stop referring to them as influencers and recognize that they're they're larger than mainline celebrities in their own right. They've worked for their social influence. Um, they've built massive audiences that relate to them on the basis of how real they've been and how relevant they are to their fans. Um, the second is that as younger audiences continue to be jaded by mass media, traditional advertising, they will seek out social celebrities who are far more real than traditional celebrities. They're no longer celebrities that you see on a red carpet. They're somebody who you see on your phone, and you've probably seen photographs or videos of them in their bathroom washing their face. So they're a lot more real to you, and you follow them because you believe in their passion and you believe in their cause, and you're part of their larger community. So you can't necessarily clump celebrities with social media influencers. And the third is that you can't put them in a broad category. So you can't like these are, these are travel influencers. I think over time we're going to see far more diversification and a lot, and that is in fact going to unlock more opportunities in this space.
Okay. And are you seeing, a trend of more and more hyper specialization of the digital celebrity, or are you seeing them once they rise to power, then they can, like Amitabh Bachchan sells everything, he sells tobacco,
Right,
Coca-Cola, he sells biscuits,
right,
he sells phones. He's not a
yeah,
category leader, so to speak. But in this
right.
digital content segment, it seems like they become experts, as you said, they become travel, food, whatever. Where do you see this future evolve? Are they going to become larger than life, much like the Bollywood celebrities, where once the name is so strong, they can pretty much sell anything across categories?
No, I actually think that is what is going to get disrupted, because that is how platforms have gotten disrupted as well. Traditionally, with mass media, you went to a massive celebrity with mass recognition and decided to put one face on a certain billboard because you knew that that is going to cut through X number of audiences. But the way social media platforms have evolved, you and I were both in our 40s. Sorry, I'm giving away this information publicly.
No one could tell from the way we look, so that's fine.
Both women, both living in largely the same pin code. Um, studied internationally, live and work in India, running our own practices, etc. But your social media feed looks entirely different from my social media feed. So if today a brand wanted to reach out to you and to me, they would need to plan differently, because who you follow and who I follow are entirely different. So the way media is getting disrupted is that over time, we all have to program for audiences of one. Because you are necessarily going to see the kind of content that algorithms throw up depending on what your consumption choices are, which are very different from what mine are. And that is going to lead to further specialization.
Okay, hyper specialization, catering to a very high
fragmentation.
and
Absolutely.
fragmentation. And the algorithm will become sharper and sharper on understanding very specifically individual requirements and needs. Oh, okay, okay. So very different. So you're saying it'll be a paradigm shift in the way the celebrity is construed, in the way the brands are endorsed, and also then a massive, massive expansion in terms of just the access to people who could go out and promote these brands. Okay, so that's
absolutely, and not just promote brands now, right? Now flip this to who has influence, who has a following, who has a community and recognition in that community, and therefore what are the stories you're going to be able to tell. So it's no longer just massive celebrities getting packaged with massive production scale budgets to produce films or TV shows that attract X amount of audiences. It's going to come down to the story that you're telling, and therefore how authentic is the face that you package with that story.
Okay. So the storytelling will become very, very different and evolve depending on who's telling it and who's listening. Okay. Also, want to touch upon what you started out saying, with technology, everyone can become a content creator. Now, this
Yeah,
everyone becoming a content creator means just a content explosion. We're experiencing some of that right now. There's just so much content on my feed. I just don't know what to see.
100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Where do you see this going? It's come to a point where a lot of people are doing the social media detox. There is a lot of content fatigue in the system right now already. Phones are poised to get better, smarter, sharper, better video quality. More people are traveling, more experiences are being accumulated. Where do you see the dust settling on this? What is going to happen? Are you really going to have 1.4 billion people create this content and create a creator economy, or are you going to see this dust settle? And yeah, how is this trend going to play out?
I think we won't have a choice but to curate our social media footprint the way we curate our CVs.
Hmm.
Literally having social media influence or having a reputation online is going to become akin to having a bachelor's degree. Because
Wow.
depending on what you talk about, what you follow, the kind of um, messages you put out in the universe, it almost feels like I'm taking from the notebook, but I'm not. Um, it is going to become about signaling, and depending on the kind of footprint you've been able to curate for yourself, that is the kind of opportunities you're going to be able to unlock for yourself.
Hmm. Okay. So you see that people are going to continue creating content.
A
That's not.
100%, and it's almost become and social media influence has become a shortcut to money, fame, and power, and we see everyone going that route, from politicians to luxury brands. Earlier, luxury brands used to have a one-way conversation. They would tell you, "Hey, this is what we stand for." Now, all conversation is two-way, and we have to be able to participate in that.
Okay. Okay. Where are you seeing AI play into all this? There's so much buzz about AI. Let's talk about AI two ways. One is in terms of the people you are managing and the talent pool, and where you're seeing it from the creator economy perspective. And secondly, from a workspace perspective, how are you seeing AI being used within the workspace? So we can take whichever one first.
So, okay, I'll go with the last one first. Um, Actually, for the talent that we manage, as well as the teams that we have here at OML, in its current avatar, I see AI as two parts: optimizing time and effort that we would otherwise spend, and this is all technology, right? So earlier, you didn't have printers at scale; people would paint movie posters. Right now we have printing, therefore we're able to canvas the country with a new film that's coming out or a new show that's coming out. Hey, all posters have gone live. We've moved to digital billboards. At the press of a button, we're able to screencast to all of these digital billboards across multiple points of location. You no longer need to print and mount each billboard everywhere that exists. Similarly, AI is going to speeden up execution. And this goes for both our teams as well as the talent that we manage. And obviously I've chosen a parallel example from my universe, but even when it comes to producing content, um, you know subtitling everything, editing content to produce the best looking video out there, taking care of post production, a lot of these things that AI is capable of doing today will start getting adopted. I think when it comes to the future, and this is where I stand on the debate, I've always believed that tools like AI or any data sets that you're given can always help sharpen the brief, make you smarter at attempting what you're trying to do, make you better or faster. But creativity, according to me, has always been human effort. That
Hmm.
is an inherently human trait. And while you can use AI as something to jam with, they give you the first six options before you use it to respond. Let's be honest, that job is simply you paraphrasing or selecting the best, because that is the best reflection of who you are at that moment.
Hmm.
Um, if you were to truly create something unique, it would be something that happens without the use of these tools. It's
Hmm.
the effort that you put in minus the tools that makes it uniquely your work.
Hmm. Okay. So you're saying the tools are here, the tools can help, the tools can speed,
100%.
they can assist, but eventually it is the creator who sits at the top of this hierarchy.
100%. And the creators that use the tools are the ones that will come out on top faster.
Okay, so you're propagating for creators to use, at least use the tools, see how they can
Yes,
fast, quick and better
absolutely.
their work. Okay, what's the buzz within the creator community without naming anyone? What is going on? Are they scared? Are they excited? You know, there's all these strikes going on in Hollywood. There's lots of apprehension in the system from what it seems. What is the concern, and is it a real concern from your end?
I think the strikes, or at least part of the reason why the strikes happened, was because of the data that the AI models were being trained on. And the discussion around who owns the rights to the material. It's very similar to the, I think, the post that the New York Times put out, right? Saying that, hey, if you're going to train your AI models on the reportage that we have generated over the last 100 years, you owe us royalties. And I think that is where the conversation is right now. Coming from, or borrowing rather, from, say, the music industry, where royalties has always been a sticking point, right? I think that's what led to Universal pulling its catalog off of TikTok in the US. So Taylor Swift music is no longer available on TikTok for people to upload reels to at the moment, till that settles. There will have to be a Vibha media, and people who produce content or create anything original will have to be compensated. And those models are yet to evolve.
Okay, so that's the concern. That's the concern that they're echoing, that if it's mine, then at least attribute some of that credit to me and
Yes.
compensate me for this sort of thing. Okay.
Yes, I think both of those, attribution as well as compensation.
Okay. Is there a substitution fear? Is there a fear that, hey, now you're going to have this, because it creates some level of jokes, right? It's not funny as yet, but these things are smart. The people are working on this. Do you see this substituting comedy? Do you see an AI, like, do you foresee in the future you repping somebody's AI model where they say, hey, this is Gemini, this is an AI generated model. Gemini says jokes on whatever, I don't know, racism or whatever, and this is a new, this is how he looks and whatever. And like, do you see this future evolve into a bot that becomes like new age talent?
So I met a robot who's an artist.
Oh, you met a robot. Oh, great.
In Saudi Arabia last year. And she, actually, I don't know why I'm calling her she, but Ida was her name. AIDA.
Okay. Oh, she had a name. Okay, Ida.
I think she was named, I don't know why I'm saying she. Named after Ada Lovelace, who was the scientist, but added an I into the name because uses AI as the engine that powers her work. Wow, we're so married to pronouns. My niece is not going to be proud of me at all. It. Okay, we're going to go with it and them. It used AI to tell us or narrate a poem. So we were out in the deserts of Alula, and the robot enters. And one of the questions that we asked, it was an interaction. We asked, hey, how do you feel about being here? And Ada ended up narrating a whole poem about, and instantly sort of working with the people in the room, reflecting upon what was in front, talking about who else is there in the room, talking about being under the, starlit sky in the middle of the desert, having very few people around, and sort of describe this entire experience, and was able to put it to a meter so that it sounded like poetry. Right? And then we also saw, and this robot had two skills. One was conversational ability, and was able to have a conversation with the room, as well as, narrate poetry and sing and things like that.
Multi-purpose Ada.
Yeah. And the second ability was that to paint, because also had a robotic arm that knew how to use brushes and
Oh, wow.
wet paint, like live paint, and did live painting of their experience of having us spend 2 nights with
Okay. So
the
now
robot.
what didn't work for you? What was your red flag?
Uh, one was that it was it was trained on data that already existed.
Okay, so that is your plagiarism issue with it, that this content
Yes,
is not original. Okay.
right.
But then
But what
that's like questioning generative AI as it stands today, right?
100%, 100%. And the second is that um, it almost felt like we were the subjects,
Hmm.
which we weren't prepared to be.
But which seems like the plan for the evening. Like it was, if it wasn't you, it would have been someone else. They were just trying to.
100%.
Okay. But would you like, let's say the copywriting issue gets sorted and they say, okay, we will in fact start paying some sort of royalty to the people we've taken this content from. Then do
Right.
you see a future in which you would be repping bots? Like, do you really, like, you're saying you met this robot, right? It seems to have done a decent enough job at not a very high cost over time. Obviously, commercialization
Absolutely.
down. Do you
Right.
see these
Right.
avatars coming through where you're now human beings are now, being completely
I think as absolutely. So I think as OML, we've always uh, been on the lookout to rep talent that we believe has a voice that hasn't yet been given the spotlight and the stage that they deserve. And by that nature, we've always been very picky with the kind of talent that we end up working with. I believe that if there is a job to be done that can happen at a mass produced level, one, it ceases to be art. And second, it doesn't need representation because it's available as an off the shelf commodities.
Hmm.
So I personally don't see us repping
But what if
AI
a
bots anytime soon.
scientist A in Minnesota comes to you and says, hey, this is Ada is the base case model, and I've developed Ada plus plus plus. She can actually merge Taylor Swift with, I don't know, Billy Joel or whatever, and bring you whatever, right? Something where it's like, oh wow, because all the artists you're repping, they have something that's unique, right? And that's why you're saying they're not
Exactly.
commodities, they're unique. Similarly, if I'm a
Exactly.
my create my entity which says, hey, here's something that no other scientist has been able to do, because obviously that's my algorithm. Google
Sure.
is its
Sure.
own algorithm, right? Anybody could create search platform, but Google search algorithm is unique and therefore it's the valuation it has. Similarly, I could create robo X saying, hey, this one is unique, not replicable, because what I've done is proprietary, patented, blah blah. Do you not see a future where you could have
No,
these.
in fact, I don't, because I also believe that if somebody does create that, they will make more money by being able to allow other artists and other creators to use that
Hmm.
engine to produce more. I don't think it would work for that engine to be labeled by one brand that produces one type of entertainment.
Hmm. Okay.
If that engine is created, it makes sense for multiple people across the world to be able to use that engine to produce what they wish to,
Hmm.
faster, better, smarter, sooner, all of those things.
So you're a humanitarian at the core of it. Sounds like you're like create the robot, but it's a betterment of humanity and the betterment of society. You're not saying the dominance of machine over man. You're saying machine's going to come in and aid humanity, not really.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying careers will stay the same, right? Careers will evolve to be able to work alongside technological advancements. I don't think we can hang on to the past for the past's sake.
Hmm.
That will definitely change. But I definitely see us growing along with technological advancements.
Because on
I don't
radio,
see one taking over the other.
on primetime radio, well, not on primetime slots yet, but on radio, they do have an AI generated RJ who is curating playlists, rapping along, presenting the news
Absolutely.
hour, and it's happening right now. So, 5 years
Yes,
later, it's going to have its identity, its look, its feel, its voice. That's going to have large fan following. So I'm just trying to draw that
absolutely.
parallel in the talent
Yeah.
universe. you know?
Absolutely. And then our expectations will change, right? If if you have a machine that's able to replicate all of these things, it doesn't require human effort. What we're actually saying is that human effort then commands higher value and is to be used for higher order objectives. And if this RJ has their own brand, their own look, all of the things that you mentioned, our our expectations from an RJ will change. Because in fact, what we've just done is commoditize that service.
Okay. So in a way, this might push humanity to do bigger, better, because at the base level, the lowest common denominator gets sort of nullified, saying, hey, everyone can do this. What do you
Exactly.
bring to the table?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
what are we putting our time and effort on?
Okay. So really challenging humanity to think of new frontiers, while the base level sort of bread and butter can be duplicated. So it's all in the jam. It's like, okay, sounds good. Okay, tell me a little bit about these streaming platforms. We've seen a massive shift, right, in the way we consume content, where we go to watch our movies, where it's getting produced, where are we, final distribution methods are changed. I watch a lot of my content sitting here, the comfort of my home today, as opposed to spending a lot of my time going to the theaters. Of course, the cinema hall hasn't died; it still exists, but there is a shift to watching content on your home screens for these platforms.
Yes.
Where do you see the next shift coming? Do you think these OTT platforms are going to maintain some level of dominance? Is that third player, or is there another party that's coming in that you feel like, hey, power balance is going to shift? Where do you see this sort of distribution end evolving to?
So I always look to my niece and nephew to understand their relationship with media and technology to see where those shifts are coming from. I remember my nephew, I remember asking my nephew if he wanted to go out and see a movie about 2 years ago, and he was 10 then. And he was really confused by the idea because his response to that was, so you mean you and I have to leave the house, go to a third place, watch the same thing in the same place for 3 hours, and we can't do anything else for those 3 hours? It almost sounded like punishment to him. Versus, when we were growing up, we're like, hey, let's go watch a movie. And that was, our parents taking us out for a treat. If I look to where he's spending most of his time now, it's on screens. Even the way he hangs out with his friends is not going to watch a movie, but his friend coming over with his own digital device, and the two of them sitting in the same room but looking at two different digital screens. And they might be talking to each other on those digital screens, but they're not even looking at each other. They're looking at the screen in front. And I think that is going to start dictating some of the shifts and the changes that we see. Whether it is them interacting with each other in their digital avatars, in the world of Roblox, or in the world of Minecraft, or any of those online games. We already have musicians and comedians who are performing inside these online worlds. I think these worlds are also going to be where some of the next big stories come from. I don't think we're very far from seeing an interactive movie play out in one of these gaming worlds. And I really see that as probably one of the things that's going to come our way very soon.
Okay, wow, cool. Okay, that's a very cool trend coming through that I haven't heard about, but it sounds very much that it could happen. Very, very interesting. Tell me a little bit about legal structures. As you rep talent, and with AI coming in, and it's anything, right? It could be my voice, it could be my movement, it could be anything that now AI could replicate and sort of mass produce. So, are there any legal structures in place already from an AI perspective that protect this talent? And is there some chatter in the legal fraternity? Like, where are you seeing legal frameworks come through, and where are the gaps in legal frameworks today as we see it?
I think legal frameworks that are being discussed right now. And honestly, nobody has an answer that works for everyone. Everyone's sort of discovering this together as we go, but they largely fall into 3 or 4 buckets. One is privacy concerns. Then, in terms of, I think what we discussed earlier in terms of monetization, attribution, and then biases and any sort of ethical dilemmas that follow from those biases. If let me just look at all the stories that we grew up with. Okay, unfortunately, in a country like India, more often than not, if you were listening to a story in Hindi or a Bollywood film, you would hear somebody describing a woman and say, "Wo sundar aurat," right? The picture would be that of someone super fair. That's just because our ethical bias or our social and cultural biases bled into storytelling, right? But if we grew up with narratives that said "wo sundar kali aurat," that would have been completely different. And that's why I believe ethics goes a long way in informing the creative choices we make. So I think that is a big part of figuring out what sort of data is AI being trained on right now and what sort of output are we going to have from it. So outside of the other things that we spoke about,
which models also with an ethical lens and a socially
sensitive lens, it's going to go a long, long way. And I don't think we have all the answers, right?
Okay. So the legal area seems to be a little bit fuzzy right now. There's no clear definitions. No one's really obviously set up norms for how to train the models. Okay. So it seems like very, very nascent right now. Okay, let's show the last section in the conversation on careers.
I have sorry, this is video. Are you back? Okay, I have you. Okay, last section.
I have lost you though. Are you? Yeah, you're here. Yeah, I see. Okay, last section on careers. Careers and skill building a little bit. So let's talk about skill building first. Now you've seen this industry, right? You've been in it for a very long time. You just gave me a very, very robust and in-depth understanding of what's coming. As somebody young who, in school, college, high school, is like, hey, I want to be in this media and entertainment space. How should they be thinking about skilling? So we can do two, since you understand the media and entertainment space, and obviously you understand business in your capacity as CEO. So for someone who wants to be in the artistic space, and then someone who wants to be in the managerial, in the more management space, what sort of skills do you see as necessary for someone in the future?
I think when it comes to the business side of things, I think it helps to decide whether you're going to be a generalist or a specialist. As a specialist, you end up going deeper within a field and getting known by it and bettering skills, enhancing output, etc. And that's what you'd end up spending most of your time and effort on, right? As a generalist, you need to know a little about enough to be able to then coordinate between those. And largely, careers fall between the two of them. Either you're operating as a generalist, and therefore you're either, a planner or a product manager or somebody in marketing whose inherent job is nothing but curation. So you know enough to be able to move the needle forward on any project. And those are largely generalist roles. Specialist roles are where you have a specific output. And that is where adapting to technology becomes even more important. Because the more specialized the skill set, the quicker you will have technology that becomes available to be able to do that task for you. So therefore, then how do you work with it to be able to get out on top? Okay. So that's where I see things falling on the business spectrum. So when I just
little deeper on that, the generalist versus specialist is very helpful. But whether I choose to become a generalist or a specialist, what skills do I need from a future? If I were to just put on a futuristic hat and say, hey, things are different, things are going to be different in the future. How should I be thinking about skilling? Are there any critical skills that you think are important?
I think one would necessarily be, and I know we spoke a lot about the technology, etc., and technology tools becoming available where you don't need to work with people as much. But I do believe that learning how to work with people is going to be a very, very essential skill because that is what will be left to humans.
Mm.
If the things that humans can do, if things that humans did earlier, robots can do, the things that robots can't do, humans must do.
Mm.
And that part, I think, will become really important. I think outside of that, just anticipating trends, planning for the future, um, innovating, creativity. I think these remain skills for the future that are irreplaceable.
Okay. Innovation, creativity, working and collaborating with others.
Collaborating. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And anything on the creator economy side, anything from their perspective in terms of skilling for the future?
Like I was saying, I think I'm very excited about the word influencer itself growing away because everyone will have to be a creator. So learning what are the necessary tools to be able to put your own story out there is going to become very important. Um, but outside of that, everything else that falls under that bucket, right? Whether it's content strategy, whether it's an ethical AI consultant or an ethics officer, these are newer careers that are going to come around, and it's
Hmm.
important to be ready for them. I remember I don't know if you told me this, but I think someone mentioned that at MIT they insist that every science
Correct.
degree is backed up by humanities course.
Correct.
Sorry, what is that called?
Yeah, I don't remember what it's called, but they have that. They have that in there.
They have that as a prerequisite.
Yeah.
That gives me a lot of hope for the future because you can become a superior technologist, but if you don't know how to apply it and if you don't have a sense of humanities or a sense of perspective of what the world needs and where we came from and our history, the way it will get applied can be a challenge.
Oh, so you like that? You like the fact that the engineers are getting skilled in the humanities. You see that as important.
100%. Absolutely.
And the flip side of that, the humanities guys being trained in technical. You like that too?
I think they have no choice.
They have no choice.
But they will have to find a way to work with technology. You may not want to be trained in it or produce technological tools, but using them is not going to be an option anymore.
And as an organization that is hiring young people constantly, if you had to advocate to colleges and schools that are training these young people, what would you tell them to equip them with as they come into the workforce?
I think just adaptability, just knowing that things are going to change and we will have to adapt is probably the number one trait to look out for. But outside of this, I really believe that focusing on relationships, because that is what's going to always keep us, just open newer doors, newer opportunities for us, and that's something I've always stood by. All relationships are about setting and meeting expectations. So no, if you say, hey, I'm going to send you something by 8 o'clock, make sure you're ready by 7, or don't say 8 o'clock, and that's all relationships. I mean, we've had this at home with our parents. We say, I'm going to show up for dinner and you don't. Or if your mom's already expecting you for dinner and you don't show up, she's going to get pissed off. That applies to every relationship in the world.
Okay.
So it is really about maintaining relationships.
Okay. So it seems like the human connect, the relationships, the collaboration, that seems to be that's you're saying essentially where man will
Yes.
decide to
Absolutely. Where humans will spend most of their time and effort, right? That and adaptability, those two things.
Okay, last question, and then we'll close this. In terms of futuristic careers, you mentioned a little bit of some of AI hack or something, but any categories you're seeing emerging in terms of future careers where you're like, hey, these don't really exist, but with a decent amount of certainty, I can say these will become, new categories. Just put on a voyeuristic hat. What are you seeing as emerging careers, and are there any careers you see becoming completely obsolete or redundant, where like these people in an organization will probably cease to exist?
I think what AI has already started doing is a lot of the match the column sort of work, right? Which is, for example, and we've all heard of these cases where AI is able to diagnose diseases better because what you're doing is essentially pattern matching, or AI is able to scour through hordes of legal documents faster and more accurately. I think where machine learning and AI can help, it definitely will. And those things that ended up consuming man hours will end up becoming redundant. But because of that, and exactly because of that, all of these new opportunities will emerge, such as robotics, AI engineering, or any sort of digital optimization that you can bring to some of the most traditional professions that haven't evolved in years, whether that's farming, whether that's manufacturing, whether that's construction. We're really going to see a lot of change here.
Okay. Okay, so definitely thrust on robotics, hardware engineering, software engineering, and digital optimization. Largely, you see newer careers emerging there. Okay, terrific. Okay, all right, Gunjan, this was fabulous. Thank you for sharing all your insights. And you talked about relationships being at the cornerstone of your future strategy, but truly you're somebody who walks the talk and is futuristic, because knowing you so well, I know you keep relationships top of your priority list even today. So somebody who's really keeping up with future trends in everyday life. Gunjan Arya, thank you so much for doing this. It was a fabulous conversation.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.